The slave markets of Vorthen Station buzzed with noise and smells that made most beings sick. Merchants from across the galaxy shouted prices while buyers walked between cages like they were shopping for fruit. Security drones floated overhead, with red lights blinking, ready to shock anyone who caused trouble. Deep in the holding area where the most valuable slaves were kept, a small blue figure sat in the corner of a metal cage. Kira was only 7 years old and barely reached the knee of most adult aliens. Her pale blue skin had pretty spiral patterns that marked her as one of the Lunari people. Her large eyes leaked silver tears that caught the harsh lights above. The cage next to hers held an old, four-armed alien who used to be a teacher before soldiers came to his world. Across from her, a family of furry, cat-like beings pressed close together, their fur wet with fear sweat. All of them wore shock collars around their necks that would hurt them if they made too much noise or tried to escape. Kira tried to cry quietly, but her sobs carried through the metal corridors. She missed her mother and father. She missed her homeworld with its crystal trees and singing waterfalls. The slavers had taken her when they destroyed her village 3 months ago. They called her people crystal weepers because of their silver tears, and that made them worth a lot of money to rich buyers who wanted exotic pets above the slave pens. There was a viewing area where potential buyers could look at the merchandise through thick glass windows. Most walked past Kira without stopping. She was too small for heavy work and too young for the fighting rings. But one figure stopped and stared down at her for a long time. Marcus Ray was a human, and that made him dangerous by default. He stood almost 7 feet tall with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. Scars covered his weathered face like a map of every fight he had ever been in. His dark hair was cut short in military style, and his eyes were the color of steel. At 38 years old, he had been a soldier, a gun for hire, and now worked as what polite people called a freelance security consultant. Marcus had come to Vorthen Station to buy weapons for a job on the Outer Rim. It was supposed to be simple. Get in, make the deal, get out. He had done it 100 times before. But when he saw the little blue girl crying in her cage, something inside his chest caught fire. Humans were known across the galaxy as Deathworlders. They came from a planet so violent that it had tried to kill them in every possible way for millions of years. This had made them tough, stubborn, and very protective of things they cared about. Other species feared them because humans would fight when any sane being would run away. Marcus watched Kira wipe her silver tears with small hands that should have been playing with toys instead of wearing chains. The protective instinct that had helped humanity survive and spread across the stars began to burn hot and bright in his mind. He had seen a lot of bad things in his life, but something about this felt personal. The arms dealer he was supposed to meet could wait. Some things were more important than money or weapons or whatever job was waiting for him on the Outer Rim. Marcus turned away from the viewing window and headed for the stairs that led down to the market floor. His heavy boots made loud sounds on the metal steps. Other beings in the market moved out of his way without thinking about it. Even aliens, who had never seen a human before, could sense that something dangerous was walking among them. Marcus kept one hand near his plasma pistol, fingers drumming against the worn leather holster out of old habit. The market supervisor came waddling over with a big fake smile. Vex was a Corian, which meant he looked like a fat toad with too many eyes and sharp teeth. He made his living buying and selling people, and he was very good at reading customers. "Welcome, welcome," Vex said in his oily voice. "I have excellent merchandise today. Strong workers, beautiful companions, even some rare telepathic breeds. If you are interested in something special." Marcus did not smile back. "The Lunari child. What do you want for her?" Vex's smile got bigger, showing rows of needle-sharp teeth. "Ah, you have excellent taste. She is very rare since we pacified her homeworld. Very expensive, though. 15,000 credits. Marcus did not try to bargain or argue about the price. He just pulled out his credit pad and made the transfer. Done. This made Vex suspicious. Nobody paid full price in the slave markets. Buyers were supposed to argue and threaten and try to cheat their way to better deals. But this human just paid like he was buying food at a store. Of course, there are processing fees and transportation costs and documentation to handle, Vex said, trying to squeeze more money out of the deal. Marcus's voice dropped to a growl that made several nearby aliens take steps backward. I said. Done. Give me the girl, now. While Vex scurried away to prepare the paperwork, Marcus looked around at all the other cages. Hundreds of beings from dozens of different worlds, all reduced to property that could be bought and sold. The old teacher. Alien met his eyes through the bars, his 4 eyes filled with dignity despite his chains. The cat family pressed closer together. Sensing that something was about to happen, Marcus pulled out his communicator and sent a coded message to his ship. His AI system, which he called Echo, answered right away. Weapon systems are online? Should I prepare for departure? Marcus watched Vex coming back with Kira, the little girl stumbling because of the heavy restraints around her ankles. Her silver tears were still flowing, and she looked so small and broken that it made his hands clench into fists. Not yet, Marcus told Echo. Change of plans. We are going to need a much bigger cargo hold. Marcus walked deeper into the slave market with the steady pace of a predator. Every step of his boots on the metal floor echoed through the corridors. The crowds of aliens moved out of his way like water flowing around a rock. Even beings who had never met a human before could feel the danger radiating from him. Vex came back dragging little Kira behind him. The shock collar around her neck was blinking red, ready to hurt her if she tried to run. Her ankle restraints made her stumble with each step, and Marcus could see fresh bruises on her blue skin where the metal had rubbed raw. Here she is, Vex said with his fake merchant smile. 1 premium Lunari female, age 7 cycles. The collar stays on until the transfer is complete, of course, standard procedure for security purposes. Marcus knelt down to Kira's level and looked into her. Large silver eyes. She stared back at him with the kind of fear that came from months of pain and abuse. But underneath the fear, he could see something else. Hope, maybe, or just a stubborn refusal to give up that he recognized in himself. Hey there, little one, Marcus said in the gentlest voice he could manage. You are safe now. Nobody is going to hurt you anymore. Kira did not answer, but her tears slowed down a little. She had probably learned not to trust adults who made promises. Marcus stood up and turned. Back to Vex. The Corian was still smiling, but his many eyes kept darting around nervously. Something about the human's calm attitude was making him worried. The collar, Marcus said. Take it off, Vex's smile flickered. I'm afraid that is not possible until all documentation is finalized. Security regulations require that all merchandise remain properly restrained during transfer procedures. Take it off now? Sir, I understand your eagerness, but protocols must be followed. The collar will be removed once we reach the processing station and complete the biometric scans and ownership transfer forms. Marcus moved faster than most alien species could see. 1 second he was standing normally, the next his combat knife was pressed against Vex's throat while his other hand gripped the Corian's arm hard enough to crack bone. Let me explain something to you, Marcus said in a voice that was perfectly calm and absolutely terrifying. I just paid you 15,000 credits for that little girl. That makes her my property now, and I want the collar off my property, right now? The entire market went silent. Even the security drones seemed to hesitate, their programming struggling to process what was happening. Vex's eyes went wide with panic as he felt the knife's edge against his skin. You do not understand, Vex stammered. There are procedures. Regulations from the Trade Commission? I could lose my license if I do not follow proper protocols. Marcus pressed the knife a tiny bit deeper, just enough to draw a thin line of purple blood. The only thing you need to understand is that I have killed beings twice your size for half the reason. Remove the collar or I will show you exactly why the rest of the galaxy calls us Deathworlders. It was not an empty threat. Marcus had fought in 3 wars and dozens of smaller conflicts. He had killed pirates, terrorists, slavers, and worse. Things in dark places between the stars. His reputation was built on the simple fact that he always meant what he said. Vex's hands shook as he pulled out the control device for Kira's collar. Please, you must understand if my supervisors find out that I violated procedure. Your supervisors are not my problem, Marcus said. Your health and continued breathing, however, depend entirely on what you do in the next 10 seconds. The collar fell away from Kira's neck with a soft electronic whine. She immediately reached up to rub the red marks where it had been chafing her skin. For the first time since Marcus had seen her, she was not crying. Good, Marcus said, releasing Vex and stepping back. The carrion collapsed against the nearest wall, gasping for air. Now we can complete our business properly. But Marcus was not done. He pulled out his credit pad again and started typing rapidly. The numbers on the screen made Vex's eyes go even wider. What are you doing? Vex asked. Making another purchase, Marcus replied. He looked around at all the other cages filled with slaves. The old teacher alien was watching intently. The cat family was pressed against their bars, hope beginning to show in their eyes. I want to buy everything in sectors 7 through 12. Vex nearly fell over. Everything. But that is over 200 slaves. The cost would be enormous. I can afford it. But why would you want so many? You cannot possibly need that many workers or servants or... Marcus's smile was sharp enough to cut steel. Who said anything about keeping them? The implications hit the crowd of onlookers like a physical blow. Slaves throughout the market began to stir with an energy that made the security drones drift. Closer, their weapon systems charging up. The idea that someone might buy hundreds of slaves just to set them free was so insane that most beings could not process it. Echo, Marcus said into his communicator. Transfer the credits. All of them. Marcus, his AI's voice carried a note of concern. That will purchase 237 additional slaves. Our cargo capacity is insufficient for that many passengers. I know. Contact the Mercenary Guild. Send a priority message to every human crewed ship within 3 jumps of this station. Tell them it is a rescue operation and payment is guaranteed. Around the market, other species were beginning to understand what was happening. The casual brutality of the slave trade was so normal that most beings just accepted it as the way things were. But humans were different. Humans had a reputation for taking things personally, for turning individual problems into galactic incidents. Marcus knelt down next to Kira again and gently took her small hand in his large, scarred one. What is your name, little one? Kira, she whispered in a voice like wind chimes. Well, Kira, how would you like to go home? Her silver eyes went wide with disbelief. Home, but the slavers said my world was destroyed. Not your old home, Marcus said gently, but somewhere safe where you can be free and happy. Would you like that? Kira nodded so hard her whole body shook. Then she did something that surprised everyone in the market. She smiled. The credit transfer went through with a soft chime that echoed across the suddenly silent market. Vex stared at his datapad like it might explode. The number on the screen was more money than he usually made in a year, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the device. This is impossible, he muttered. You cannot just buy every slave in 3 sectors. The paperwork alone would take days. The background checks, the health certifications, the transportation permits. Marcus picked up Kira and settled her comfortably in his arms. She was so light he could barely feel her weight, but she wrapped her small arms around his neck and held on tight. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The beauty of the free market, Marcus said with a cold smile, is that money talks louder than bureaucracy. You have your payment. I want my property transferred immediately. Other slaves threw out. The market were beginning to react to what they had heard. The old teacher alien straightened up in his cage, his 4 arms no longer hanging limp with despair. The cat family was pressing against their bars, whispering to each other in their native language. Word was spreading through the holding areas. Like wildfire. Echo, Marcus said into his communicator. Status report on those human ships. 14 vessels have confirmed receipt of your message, his AI replied. Estimated arrival time is 18 minutes. However, I must point out that station security is becoming agitated. Their response protocols are activating. Marcus could see the security drones clustering together near the main entrance, their red lights blinking faster. More guards were arriving from other sections of the station, their weapons ready but not yet aimed. The situation was balanced. On a knife's edge. "Sir," one of the security guards called out, his voice amplified by his helmet speakers. "We need you to proceed to the processing center for identity verification and cargo inspection." Marcus did not move. "I am a paying customer, conducting legal business, unless you are accusing me of a crime." The guard hesitated. Technically, everything Marcus had done was completely legal under Galactic Federation trade law. Buying slaves was allowed. Freeing them was his right as their owner. The system that made slavery possible also protected his right to do whatever he wanted with his property. "The quantity of your purchase requires additional documentation," the guard tried again, "for tax purposes and cargo manifests." "Then bring the documentation here," Marcus replied. "I am not leaving these beings unprotected while you process paperwork." While this conversation was happening, something else was occurring throughout the market. The slaves were starting to organize themselves. The old teacher alien was using his 4 hands to communicate in sign language with beings in other cages. The cat family was comforting younger slaves who had started crying with hope. Instead of despair, Kira lifted her head from Marcus's shoulder and whispered something in her native language. Marcus did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear from her tone. She was asking if this was real, if she was really going to be free. "Yes, little one," Marcus said softly. "Everyone goes free today." Vex had recovered enough to start protesting again. "This is madness. You cannot just disrupt the entire slave trade because of some misguided emotional response. The economic implications alone are not my problem," Marcus finished. "I am exercising my legal rights as a property owner. Unless you want to explain to your supervisors why you refused a legitimate business transaction." The first human ship arrived ahead of schedule. The Thunder Bay was a converted military transport with enough cargo space to hold 100 passengers. Her captain, a weathered woman named Torres, came striding into the market with 6 of her crew members, all of them armed and ready for trouble. "Ray," she called out, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to command. "What kind of mess have you gotten us into this time?" "The good kind," Marcus replied. "How many people can you take?" 120 if we pack them tight." "But Marcus, there are hegemony ships in this system. 3 battle cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace about 10 minutes ago." This news sent a chill through the market. The hegemony was the largest slave trading organization in the galaxy, with connections throughout the Federation government and enough military power to enforce their will. If they were coming here, it meant someone very important was very angry about what Marcus was doing. "How long before they reach the station?" Marcus asked. 20 minutes, maybe less if they push their engines." Marcus looked around at all the cages still full of slaves. 237 beings who had been given hope for the first time in months or years. He could not abandon them now, no matter what the consequences might be. Echo broadcast a message on all frequencies. "Emergency rescue operation in progress. Any human ship capable of carrying passengers, we need you here now." "Marcus," Torres said quietly, "the hegemony does not negotiate. If they think you are stealing their property, they will shoot first and file paperwork later. Then we better move fast," Marcus replied. He raised his voice to address the entire market. "Attention, everyone. We are going to get you out of here, but we need to move quickly and stay calm. Follow the instructions of the human crews and everything will be fine." The rescue operation began immediately. Human crews spread throughout the market using portable plasma cutters to slice through cage bars and restraint systems. Medical teams started treating the wounded and malnourished. The freed slaves moved in organized groups toward the loading areas, helped by beings who had been in chains just minutes before. Kira watched it all with wide eyes, her small hand gripping Marcus's shirt. "Are you angels?" she asked in her wind chime voice. Marcus almost smiled. "No, little one. We are just humans, and humans do not like bullies." The evacuation moved like a well-oiled machine. Human crews formed organized lines to move freed slaves toward the transport ships, while armed veterans took defensive positions throughout the market. Marcus had seen enough wars to know that the next few minutes would decide whether this rescue became a success or a disaster. More human ships kept arriving. The merchant vessel Lucky Strike docked next to Thunder Bay, followed by the armed escort Defiance and the heavy freighter New Horizon. Within 15 minutes, there were 12 human ships connected to Vorthen Station, their crews working together with the efficiency of a military operation. "Status report," Marcus called out while still holding Kira in his arms. 143 freed and loaded, Captain Torres responded. Medical teams are treating severe malnutrition cases and trauma injuries. We have enough transport capacity now, but Marcus... She paused and looked worried. Those hegemony ships are moving fast. 8 minutes until they reach weapons range. Marcus handed Kira to Dr. Mills, the chief medical officer from New Horizon. The little girl did not want to let go, but Marcus promised her he would be right back. She seemed to understand that the big human had important work to do. "Echo, open a channel to all human vessels," Marcus ordered. "Channel open. This is Ray. In about 7 minutes, 3 hegemony battle cruisers are going to arrive here looking for a fight. Anyone who wants to leave with their cargo, now is the time." The response came back immediately from 12 different ship captains, and it was unanimous. Not one of them was leaving. "Guess we are doing this the hard way," Torres muttered. The hegemony ships dropped out of hyperspace exactly on schedule. They were massive vessels designed for intimidation as much as combat, with weapons that could crack a planet's crust and armor thick enough to shrug off most attacks. Their commander, Admiral Korath, opened communications immediately. "Human vessels, you are in violation of hegemony commercial interests and interstellar law. Return our property immediately or face immediate military action." Marcus activated his own communicator, broadcasting on all frequencies so that everyone in the system could hear. "Admiral Korath, these beings are no longer your property. They have been legally purchased and freed according to Galactic Federation trade law." Federation law does not supersede hegemony sovereign rights. Korath's voice was cold with fury. "You have 60 seconds to return our strategic assets, or we will take them by force." Marcus looked around at the freed slaves still being loaded onto human ships. Many of them were children like Kira, others were elderly beings who had been worked nearly to death. All of them were looking at the humans with expressions of desperate hope. "Counteroffer, Admiral," Marcus replied. "You have 60 seconds to withdraw before we demonstrate why the galaxy calls us Deathworlders." What happened next violated every rule of space combat and military common sense. The human ships, most of them converted cargo haulers and escort fighters, moved into attack formation against 3 military battle cruisers. By any reasonable assessment, they should have been vaporized in seconds, but humans had never been particularly reasonable. "All ships, this is Ray," Marcus broadcast. "Remember, we are not trying to win a space battle. We just need to buy time for the evacuation to finish." The first shot came from the hegemony flagship, a plasma bolt that punched through the station's outer hull near the docking bays. The human response was immediate and coordinated. 12 ships opened fire as one, but their weapons were not aimed at the enemy vessels. Instead, they targeted the station itself. Explosions blossomed across Vorthen Station as the humans systematically destroyed the slave markets, the holding pens, the processing centers, and every piece of infrastructure that supported the trade in sentient beings. It was not random destruction. Every shot was carefully placed to eliminate the slave trade while avoiding casualties. "What are you doing?" Admiral Korath demanded as his sensors showed the station's commercial sectors being systematically demolished. "Renovation?" Marcus replied calmly. "If we cannot take all the slaves with us, we will make sure nobody else can use them either." It was a brilliant tactical move disguised as an act of vandalism. The hegemony had come here to reclaim their property, but Marcus was destroying the property rather than let it be recaptured. It forced Korath to choose between starting a shooting war with humans or watching his investments burn. The standoff lasted exactly 4 minutes. Human ships continued to pour fire into the station while hegemony vessels held their position. Weapons charged but not firing. Meanwhile, the last of the freed slaves were being loaded onto transport ships. Final evacuation complete, Dr. Mills reported. All freed beings are aboard and secure, Marcus smiled grimly. All human vessels prepare for immediate departure. But Admiral Korath was not finished. This act of terrorism will not go unanswered. Human, the hegemony has a long memory and vast resources. Admiral, Marcus replied, his voice carrying across every communication frequency in the system. Let me tell you something about humans. We are the species that looked at a universe full of bigger, stronger, smarter aliens and decided to make it our home anyway. We survived ice ages and asteroid impacts and nuclear wars just to get off our planet. And now we are here, scattered, across 1,000 worlds, and we do not take kindly to bullies. He paused, letting his words sink in. You want a war with humanity. Try us. But remember that we are the ones who turned disaster into opportunity, who made allies out of enemies, and who earned our reputation as Deathworlders by never knowing when to quit. Every human ship in this fleet is crewed by people who chose to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. Think about what that says about us before you decide to make this personal. The silence that followed stretched for almost a minute. Then, without warning, the hegemony ships began to turn away. This is not over, Korath transmitted. Yes, Marcus replied, watching the enemy vessels jump to hyperspace. It is. The human fleet scattered across the star system like seeds carried by cosmic wind. Each ship carried its precious cargo toward different worlds where freedom still meant something. Some headed for the outer rim colonies where questions were not asked and new identities could be bought. Others made for the core worlds where refugee organizations would help the freed slaves start new lives. Marcus stood in the observation deck of his ship, the Wanderer, watching the other vessels disappear into hyperspace. Kira sat beside him, in a chair that was too big for her small frame, her legs swinging freely as she stared out at the stars. She had not left his side since the evacuation began, and he found he did not mind the company. Where are we going? She asked in her wind chime voice. Sanctuary Station, Marcus replied. It is a free port run by people who believe everyone deserves a chance at a better life. They have schools there, and parks, and other children to play with. Kira's large silver eyes reflected the starlight as she considered this. Will you stay there too? Marcus felt something twist in his chest. The honest answer was no. He was a mercenary, a gun for hire who went where the work took him. Sanctuary Station was a place for families and normal people, not for someone with his history and reputation. But looking at this little girl who had already lost everything once, he found it hard to say the words. For a while, he said instead. Until we know you are safe and happy. Echo's voice came through the ship's communication system. Marcus, I have the final casualty reports from the rescue operation. Go ahead. 0 fatalities among the freed slaves. Minor injuries only, mostly from malnutrition and psychological trauma. The medical teams report that everyone will make full recoveries given proper care and time. Marcus nodded, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders, and the cost analysis. Monetary expenditure for the operation was 412,000 credits. Potential diplomatic complications are significant, as the hegemony has filed formal protests with the Federation Council. Probability of future retaliation remains high, and the value of 237 lives. Echo paused for exactly 1.7 seconds, which was an eternity for an AI. Incalculable. Kira looked up at Marcus with a puzzled expression. What is he talking about? Echo is my ship's computer, Marcus explained. He helps me keep track of things. Sometimes he asks questions that do not have easy answers. Oh, Kira thought about this for a moment. Like, how come some people are mean to others just because they can be? Marcus almost smiled. Even at 7 years old, she was asking the same questions that philosophers had been debating for centuries. That is exactly like that, little one. His communicator chimed with an incoming message. The sender identification made his eyebrows rise. Echo, put this through the secure channel. The holographic display showed a human woman in her 50s with steel gray hair and the bearing of someone used to command. Admiral Lisa Chun was the highest-ranking human officer in the Federation Navy and, according to rumors, one of the most dangerous people in the galaxy. Captain Ray, she said without preamble. That was quite a show you put on at Vorthen Station, Admiral Chun. Marcus kept his voice carefully neutral. I was not aware the Navy was interested in private commercial transactions. Chun's smile was sharp. When those transactions involve destroying a major slave market and humiliating the hegemony in front of half the galaxy, we tend to take notice. Marcus waited. In his experience, admirals did not call just to chat. The Federation Council is meeting an emergency session, Chun continued. The hegemony is demanding your arrest and the return of their property. They are also threatening to withdraw from several important trade agreements if their demands are not met. And I wanted you to know that the human delegation will be voting against any such action. What you did today was illegal, reckless, and completely contrary to established diplomatic protocols. Her smile widened. It was also exactly what humanity stands for. Marcus felt Kira's small hand slip into his. She was listening to every word, trying to understand the adult conversation that would determine her future. There's something else, Chun added. The Sanctuary Coalition has been looking for an experienced security consultant to help coordinate their rescue operations. Someone with the right skills and reputation to organize similar missions. The pay is terrible, but the work is meaningful. Marcus looked down at Kira, who was watching him with those large silver eyes. I will think about it. Think fast, Chun advised. The hegemony is not going to let this go. They will be planning some kind of retaliation, and when they do, the coalition will need people like you. The transmission ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the little blue girl who had somehow changed everything. Outside the observation windows, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, indifferent to the struggles of the tiny beings who moved between them. Marcus, Kira said quietly, thank you for saving me. You do not need to thank me, little one. Yes, I do, she insisted with the seriousness that only children possess. My mama always said that when someone does something good for you, you have to say thank you. It is important. Marcus knelt down so he was at her eye level. Your mama sounds like she was a very wise person. Kira nodded solemnly. She was. She used to sing to me when I was scared. Would you like me to sing for you? Before Marcus could answer, Kira began to hum a melody that sounded like starlight made into music. It was a simple tune, probably a lullaby from her destroyed world, but it carried hope and joy and the promise that even in the darkest times, there was still beauty in the universe. As her song filled the observation deck, Marcus made his decision. The galaxy was full of wars to fight and money to be made, but some things were more important than profit. Some things were worth protecting, no matter the cost. When Kira finished her song, Marcus smiled. How would you like to help me save? More people. Her eyes went wide with excitement. Really? I can help. Really, but first we get you to Sanctuary Station and make sure you are safe and healthy. Then, when you are ready, we will show the galaxy that nobody hurts children while humans are watching. Kira threw her small arms around Marcus's neck and hugged him tight. For the first time since her world had burned, she felt like she had a family again. And Marcus, who had spent most of his life fighting other people's wars, finally found a cause worth dying for. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance, and somewhere in the darkness between worlds, word was already spreading. The Deathworlders were coming, and they were taking prisoners, but they were setting them free.